So forgive me, I'm going to wander. So I've heard that sitting is the new smoking. I think standing still is the new nicotine patch. And I'm a little short for this podium. So I started dancing when I was 3 years old. I bet you don't hear a lot of speeches start with a sentence like that in this building, but it's relevant. So I had a lot of experiences in my youth. My mother was a dance teacher, and that's how I ended up in creative rhythm classes. And as I got older, I got more serious about it, and I ended up spending many of my after-school hours in the dance studio. And I noticed that however I felt when I walked into the studio, I felt differently when I walked out. And I also had a keen interest in the sciences and in health. And I was starting to think about the overlap between those interests. I wanted to better understand what was happening when I was in the studio. What was that experience all about? What was happening in my brain? What was happening in my body? How was that all connected? And how could I help other people to have that experience? I was interested in becoming a doctor. I wanted to help people feel well. So I graduated from high school after taking a whole lot of advanced science courses, and I went to Oberlin College. I went to Oberlin College because of a brochure that I got in the mail that said, you might think this is a bad way to pick a college, but it actually worked out. It had a picture of the world on it. It was all black, and it said, think one person can change the world? So do we, Oberlin. And I thought, all right, well, I'm at least reading the brochure. I'm not going to put it in the trash with all of the others, and everything I read interested me, and everything I saw when I visited interested me. And I find it interesting that I graduated from the world changing one person at a time to the world changing millions at a time. So I went through Oberlin, and I thought, okay, well, now I'm going to stop doing all of this dancing, and I'm going to get serious about preparing to be a doctor. So I was pre-med, and I majored in neuroscience. I thought, well, that's where I'm going to understand what happens in the studio in neuroscience. And I quickly realized that the neuroscience department is not a great place for a vegan. And also, maybe eventually in neuroscience you can learn things like what happens when you're in a dance studio, but certainly not in the beginning stages. And I just was not, I was bored. And I found my way into biology, which I found to be much more interesting. And I thought, you know, while I'm here, they have a dance department, I should take a dance class. Well, I didn't take one dance class, I took 30, and I ended up with a major. But I've heard that medical schools are very interested in people who study the arts, so I thought this is a really good thing. So I'll continue taking my science classes, and I'll take these dance classes, and I'll be even more marketable, and my parents are thinking, what's all this dancing about? We thought you were going to be a doctor. So I did a thesis there, a thesis project looking at how Descartes was misunderstood and what the connections of the mind and the body have been thought to be over the years, and what that has to do with our disembodied society. And actually, the concert of that, the practical application of that study was, oh no, this was in my master's degree. It all blurs together. But I continued that same line of thinking in my master's degree, where I used furniture as props for dance, because furniture a lot of times keeps us sedentary, and I used furniture to be mobile. But anyway, so I was looking at this overlap, and I still wanted to be a doctor. I moved out to California with a boyfriend, with actually a group of, it was really fun, a group of 6 kids from Oberlin, and all in a house in the Bay Area, and I needed a job out there. And we're talking about aha moments here. I've had a lot of them, and the thread through my experience has really been serendipity. That so many times along the way, things just happened. Like that brochure just showed up in the mail. I hadn't even heard of Oberlin, and it turned out to be just right. And I moved out to the Bay Area for a boyfriend that didn't work out, but I ended up getting connected through my boyfriend's mother with the head of the Children's Hospital Research Institute. And I got a job working on a study looking at cord blood transplantation for pediatric conditions. And not only did I learn a whole lot about research and the application of science in medicine, we saved quite a few lives. It was a pretty powerful experience. I never really had very much interest in research. I thought research was for people who didn't have people skills, that like needed to be in a room with a whole bunch of data instead of interacting. I thought that would be really dull. But that was the introduction. Of course, I had some of that in undergrad, but I really got interested in it in California. Still wanted to be a doctor. But I started to realize that what I really wanted to do, why I really wanted to be a doctor, was to help people live differently. And there are probably I know some exceptions to that in this room, but many doctors don't really get to help people live differently in the 7 minutes they get to talk to them once a year. So I was trying to figure all of this out, and I thought, well, what I really need to do is grow up. And what better way to grow up than to go back to school for dance? No, really, I was really thinking about this, that it was through the arts that I evolved as a person, that it's a process of self-discovery. There are many very powerful people who have studied the arts, and I wouldn't say that they think of it as having been a waste of time. So much to my parents' dismay, I went back to school for dance. I got a master's degree in choreography and continued that exploration of the mind-body problem. But I thought, I still have to be involved in science because I'm going to go into medicine or something like that, and I don't want it to look like I've just been dancing around for 3 years. So I started looking for internships. And here's another serendipitous moment. My CV ends up posted on a bulletin board in the basement of Bayview through some strange series of events, and someone sees that I have a certification in Laban movement analysis, which most people don't know what that is, but somebody walked past my CV and knew what it was and thought it might be useful. So I got a job completely unrelated to that, doing a summer internship, and I'm sitting in the office one day. We were working on cells and culture with herbs, and the person who was supervising me poked her head in and said, you're interested in dance and movement, and I think you should write a paper about how movement could help people with rheumatoid arthritis. And I thought, I don't really know what rheumatoid arthritis is, but okay. And that was another serendipitous moment, because I wrote that paper, and it ended up in a drawer in a computer file, and I finished my master's degree, and I thought, I wonder if this paper is any good. I didn't really know very much about rheumatoid arthritis. I certainly don't know a whole lot about scientific writing, but I'm going to send it to the chair of rheumatology and say, listen, I'm not really a scientist. This paper might suck. Should I throw it away, or should I do something with it? So she forwarded it to someone else in the department, and I was called in for a meeting. And there was another serendipitous moment, because she said, my research assistant is leaving, and I just took my first yoga class, and I see, there's information about yoga in this paper, and you're a dancer and also a yoga teacher. Yoga was the first time I actually enjoyed exercise, and I think it might be helpful for our patients who need to exercise and can't really find something that works for them. So how about this? Come to work for me as my research assistant. And by that point, I had discovered public health. I realized medicine might not be a way to help change the way people live, but public health could be that. And I knew that there was this emerging department about health behavior, and that was what really interested me. So she said, well, you could be here at Hopkins as my research assistant and go to the best public health school in the country And your dissertation could be the effects of yoga for people with rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, okay, sure. So that's what I did. So I was her research assistant for a whole lot of behavioral studies. So I started learning a whole lot about behavioral research with her and a few other scientists in the department. And we started this study together, and I'm waiting for this health, behavior, and society department to start. So I start taking the classes that I know I'm going to need, that are going to transfer when I finally start in this department, and we get a little bit of seed money from Hopkins, and then we get a little more. And something interesting happened in the 10 years that I was at Hopkins in various roles. Everything we applied for, we got. Everything. So every student preceptorship, every NIH grant, every private foundation grant, it was like, oh, and now we have a little bit more money. And now you have money to go take that training. And now you have money to go to that conference. And now we have money to add another site. And now we have money to bring in another instructor and add more measures. And it was like, wow, this is easy. And my mentor, who I had incredible mentoring, she said, this will stop. It won't always be this easy. You won't get everything you apply for. You're bright, but you're not that bright. And she was right. It did stop, but not for a long time. So we ended up doing this randomized controlled trial, and Marie Diener West was on my committee, and she's just wonderful. Especially because what I was most nervous about was the statistics. I'm an artist. And my mentor said, you know, if you have somebody on your committee from statistics, then they won't press you as hard on the statistics. Because they know somebody on your committee helped make sure the statistics were right. And I was taking a class with Marie, and I just thought she was such a remarkable teacher, and she made it all make sense. And I thought, I'm a little bit intimidated to ask her, because I bet everybody asks her, because she's such a great teacher, and she's the head of the department. But the reverse psychology might be maybe a lot of people are intimidated to ask her. And so if I ask her, maybe she doesn't get a lot of people asking, and she might say yes, which she did, and I'm grateful to that. So we did this great study, and I finished, and I thought, okay, well, now I'm going to continue. I'm going to do a postdoc, and that's kind of what people do. And I started looking at the lives of the women in academia that I knew. At this point, I had my first child. I got married and got married, had a kid in a very short time. That's another interesting story that I can tell you over beers sometime. So now I'm a mother, and I'm thinking, you know, academia is really interesting, but what kind of a lifestyle, if I'm thinking about changing people's lives, what kind of a life is that going to be for me? And I saw that no matter what stage you were in your career, it was always a little bit of a struggle. And I wanted more stability, and I wanted to be at my daughter's 4 p.m. drama showing. So I'm second guessing this whole life in academia thing, and interestingly enough, that's when the opportunities started falling away. So I applied for a whole lot of things that I didn't get. One of them even, I was supposed to do a postdoc through the Arthritis Foundation, who has been incredibly supportive of me, and they told me I was a shoo-in for this postdoc, and then the postdoc went away. Like it just disappeared. They restructured, it no longer existed. And that kind of thing started to get me thinking, like, maybe I'm on the wrong path here. And at that time, my father, who's in mental health, had started doing this corporate wellness work. And I was really interested in what he was doing, because he was going to the work site once a year and talking with people about their lives and their risk. And I said, Dad, you can't just go once a year. I'm learning all this stuff about health behavior change, and it's not going to work that way. You have to catch them when they're ready. You know, maybe when the day you show up is not the day that they know they want to quit smoking. And he said, okay, well, then why don't you come and do it? And I did. So I joined his team. He and a physician partner have this amazing company, Corporate Health Solutions, that does this work with a handful of self-insured companies around the country. One of which is SCA Tissue, which is the second most environmentally friendly company in the country, and I was happy to see SCA Tissue in the Johns Hopkins bathroom. So in this corporate world, I'm boots on the ground. I'm loving that work. And while I'm doing that, this dissertation that I've started has taken on a life of its own. So there are these yoga teachers and yoga researchers and people with arthritis who are contacting me from all over the world saying, I really want to practice yoga, and where can I find a teacher, and where can I find a training? And I thought, well, I have to do this because I'm like that person now. So I started training yoga teachers. So I'm doing that work. I'm training yoga teachers to work with people who have arthritis. I didn't know anything about arthritis at all, and now I know a whole lot about how to help people live differently who have it. So I'm doing that work, and in that work, I came across this university. There's this whole movement called yoga therapy that's emerging that is the therapeutic application of yoga, different from going to a studio or a YMCA and taking a yoga class. And in that evolution of the field, there's a university in Columbia, Laurel, Maryland, that I didn't know about that has started the first Masters of Science in Yoga Therapy in the country, and I thought, I have to be there. And as I talked to them more, I realized, well, not only do they also have, I think, the first Masters of something in health coaching, which I now do, but they are looking to increase the academic rigor where they are. So I'm teaching statistics. Believe it or not, I'm teaching statistics. So I'm helping people understand how to look at the science, how to read the science, which I also help to do in the boardroom. I help to do that in the corporate world, and I help to do that in the world of complementary and alternative medicine. So I guess what I can say, similar to what DA's story told, is that I could not have set out to create this path that I have been on. What I could do is be open to opportunities that showed up in front of me and be willing to consider a different way of going about things. And I'm a yoga teacher, so I believe in more than just chance. I think there's something for the serendipity, something about doors being opened or closed at certain times in our lives. And I feel grateful that I've been able to be open to what's showed up at my door along the way. So thank you.